Namaste, my dear brothers and sisters. The love and blessings of the Mother and Sri Aurobindo to all of you from Sri Aurobindo Ashram Delhi branch. Today's subject, and that is assessment of your own lifestyle. Lifestyle is a term that has been very popular now for maybe about 50 years or so. And the way it originated was perhaps, or at least became prominent, was perhaps when Denon started taking interest in this as a medical student before even he had graduated in medicine. I will not go into the story of how he turned to this and thought of using lifestyle modification based on yoga. As those days, he didn't think in terms of lifestyle modification based on yoga. He thought how to use yoga uh, in the treatment of cardiac patients. And then he started doing some experiments, some research while he was still in medical school and wanted to get some patients on whom he could do these studies. And so he started talking to other doctors to refer patients to him. And when he told them that, please refer patients to me, I want to try yoga for treating them, uh, he was told, what do you want us to tell our patients? Do you want us to tell them that we are sending you to some sort of a Swami? So then, that's how I thought that let me think of something which may be more acceptable. And he said, send them to me for uh, treatment through lifestyle modification. Because actually, yoga itself is a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle which is based on a certain view of life. And that view of life is the spiritual worldview. So, based on that, is this lifestyle. And it is one of the finest lifestyles ever devised by mankind. But at the same time, in the current age, in the West, 50 years ago, this was not so acceptable. And it was interpreted as something which would uh, tell the patients to go and live in some sort of a monastery by a Swamiji. So that's how he thought of this. And he said these will be lifestyle modification courses because by then it was known that various aspects of lifestyle, like the diet, exercise, smoking and drinking, and sleep, and above all, mental stress, which can be an important and significant accompaniment of the unhealthy or healthy lifestyle. Um, the healthy lifestyle giving us mental peace and the unhealthy giving us mental stress, that can be an accompaniment of the rest of the lifestyle itself as a whole. So he's called it lifestyle modification courses that he would conduct. So that was the beginning of this term lifestyle. And now, of course, that's how we refer to it. And generally, anyone who wants is looking for the best possible lifestyle takes cues from the lifestyle that yoga would lead us to. May or may not be called yoga, but that is the type of lifestyle modification that all those who are using this approach to treat patients not only with heart disease, but now with a much wider variety of conditions. And also, uh, it's being advised to healthy people to prevent disease, which is much easier, cheaper, and better than trying to treat it. But then, one of the things that we want to know is how is our own lifestyle and which is the dimension diet, exercise, smoking, drinking, sleep, or what is it that we should work on? And the tendency is to think in terms of these physical factors like diet, exercise, smoking, drinking, and sleep. But then, how about mental stress? We feel, well, yes, that is also there, but maybe making a minor contribution. But the main thing, perhaps, are the physical factors. Another tendency is, well, uh, psychological factors may be important, but so difficult to deal with stress. Stress is an inevitable part of life in today's world. So that we can't do anything about. So let's work on the physical factors. While to some extent it is true that it is much easier to work on the uh, physical factors, although even that is not very easy because we are creatures of habit and there are certain aspects of these physical factors to which we are attached. But all the same, it is relatively easier and it's more difficult to work on the psychological factors. But the importance of psychological factors is enormous. In fact, psychological factors can override physical factors. And this is important to understand because, firstly, we do not know, perhaps nobody knows exactly what the ideal physical factors are, how we should ideally live to be able to prevent chronic disease, or for that matter, to stay healthy. And therefore, we use whatever knowledge is available, and out of that, whatever fraction we have available with us, and try to follow it. And even within that, there are limitations because of various compulsions in modern day life. We keep making compromises. Hardly any of us uses even all the knowledge that we have with us available, which is fairly reliable, on how we should modify our diet, or how much exercise we should take, what type of exercise, how much we should sleep, etc. So, in that, even what we know, we are not able to apply because of various compulsions. And to some extent, we can get away with it. I'm not saying that we should ignore them. We should implement as much as possible. We can get away if we are mentally relaxed and at peace. Because if we try to use everything that we know, it's also possible that we may spend the whole day remaining preoccupied with the physical factors of lifestyle. That's also possible. Then what will we do with that good health if we can't do any work, if we can't really do anything meaningful with that health that we have achieved? As you know, so as happens in the Hatha Yoga, advanced practice of Hatha Yoga does the same. So if there are limitations to the extent to which we can apply even the fraction of the available knowledge with respect to physical factors that we have with us. And therefore, the importance of the psychological factors, which can override physical factors, becomes very important. And to illustrate that psychological factors can, in fact, override, I often tell a story which I might have told in some of the previous sessions also, but I'll repeat it briefly again. And that is a study that was done on rabbits to study the effect of a high fat, high cholesterol diet uh, on the possibility or risk for heart disease. And these rabbits were divided into two groups. One was given their usual healthy diet, the grass and all that, and the other group was given a high fat, high cholesterol diet. Now, after a few weeks, which is enough to create that heart disease in if you give a high cholesterol diet to rabbits, in a few weeks, it starts showing in its arteries the fatty deposits. And when after that, these rabbits were studied after those few weeks, it was found that all those who had received the healthy diet, of course, escaped the disease, whereas those who got a high fat, high cholesterol diet, even they could be sorted out into two groups. Some of them got the disease and some did not. I'm putting the results in black and white just for simplicity. They're never so black and white, but all the same. So those who got high fat, high cholesterol diet also seem to fall into two groups. One group got the disease, one did not. So what could be responsible? And we found that it seemed to have a close relationship with the position of the cage in the animal house. The rabbits were kept on racks, and the racks had shelves, and those which were on the top shelves were the ones who got the disease. Whereas those who were on the lower shelves, even if they got a high fat, high cholesterol diet, they did not get the disease. Now, what could the position of the cage, did the position of the cage have to do with getting or not getting the disease? So when they went further into detail, they found that the technician who came to feed the rabbits was not very tall. When it came to the lower cages, she took the rabbit out of the cage, held it in her lap, cuddled it, fondled it, and then kept it back in the cage and then gave it the food. Whereas when it came to the top cages, she could barely reach the cage, so she just opened the door, threw the food in, and shut the cage. So the rabbits which got a daily dose of love and affection, along with the unhealthy diet, escaped the disease. So this love and affection every day could override the physical factor, that is the high fat, high cholesterol diet. So psychological factors are that important. Now let's turn to the assessment of our own lifestyle today. And I found this through experience that this can be a very engaging and interesting, and in terms of time, a very cost efficient way of not only studying a healthy lifestyle, but also trying to discover in which dimensions we need to work on more. Uh, so you'll need a pencil and paper, or you might have with you a printout of and the score sheet, which was circulated yesterday. So either way, it doesn't really matter. So keep a pencil and paper ready so that you can answer the questions. You need not copy the questions. They'll be available in the recording. And uh, all you need to write is the question number and the score that you have in that question. Some of the questions in this questionnaire towards the end you may find rather unrealistic and far-fetched because they are based on this uh, how to what extent you can bring spirituality into your everyday life, and in that all of us have major limitations, but all the same that is the ideal, and therefore just try to answer the questions as you go along, and you'll find that it will have some meaning. I'll also try to elaborate on some of the questions as we go along, and the rest you can ask when we have questions and answers, for which I hope we'll have time because it's a pretty long questionnaire. It's a 40-item questionnaire. So it will take time even to go through the questionnaire at a relatively fast speed. So now with that, I turn to the PowerPoint, which has the questionnaire. Please pick up a paper and pen and write on it the question number and your score. You need not write the question itself. At the end, add up your score for all the questions. Of course, we'll keep adding the score also as the questionnaire goes along, so that you have the score in the individual dimension available. And also, then you can add up those scores in the individual dimensions to get the grand total. In most of the questions, the maximum score is 2, but in a few it is 4. And where it is 4, it is deliberate. And also that's how 40 questions come to have a total maximum available, maximum score of 100. So question 1, does your everyday work include physical activity? Activities such as walking to work, climbing stairs, etc. So this is the inevitable physical activity, which is a part of your daily work. For example, if your place of work is nearby, you walk to it, or at home or at the workplace, you are on a second, third, or fourth floor, or still higher, whether you use the stairs or you use the lift. If you use the stairs, you're getting some compulsory exercise. Or if you are traveling to work by, say, an underground train, you get out and then you have to, or by bus, by public transport, then you have to walk a short distance to get to work. Uh, so those are the inevitable types of physical activity which you have in your daily life. If this type of activity is more than 30 minutes a day, then your score is 4. If it is between 50 and 30 minutes, then 2. And if it is less than 15 minutes, but some activity is there, the score is 1. If there's no such activity at all, then the score is 0. So you can write down question 1 and against it, your score. Now we turn to question 2. Does your daily routine include some time set aside for physical activity? For example, jogging, walking, cycling, swimming, yogasanas, etc. Now, this question is different from the first one. This is time that you set aside in your daily routine just for physical activity of some category, like jogging, walking, cycling, swimming, yogasanas, etc. And why this is important, even if you have, say, 1 hour of physical activity, which is an inevitable part of your daily life. Still, this is important because this is structured activity. Uh, and therefore, the type of intensity, the type of top to toe workout which this can give you, the routine physical activity may not. And secondly, if this is done in a conscious manner, then its benefits could outweigh that of the routine physical activity, which is inevitable. Of course, that also, if you could do more consciously, then it can be of greater benefit. So, if this type of structured physical activity for which you set some time aside in your daily routine, if this exceeds 30 minutes, then the score is 4, 15 to 30 minutes 2. If it is there but less than 15 minutes a day, then 1. And if not at all, then 0. Now you might say that, well, someday it is 15 minutes and someday it is more than 30 minutes, as could happen, say, if it is yoga asanas. You don't miss them completely, but some days you have less than 15 minutes available, then what? Then you try and see what is it that you generally do. And generally would mean throughout this questionnaire, say 5 or more days in a week. So try and see how much duration you give to this structured activity, 5 or more days in a week. And that is the duration which you can use for scoring yourself in this question, for assigning yourself a score in this question. So this is on structured physical activity for which you set some time aside in your daily routine. So question 2, and you can write down your score. Now question 3, does your everyday routine include yogasanas and pranayamas? Now you may say that this has been already now I might say that this has been already taken care of in the previous question. Yes, to some extent it has been, but uh, this is deliberate because we want to give an additional weightage, extra weightage to yogasanas and pranayamas because of the various ways in which these practices are better than the other physical activity like jogging, swimming, and cycling. And what those benefits are, we have seen repeatedly in this course. So I'll not go into those. But this additional score that you get if your structured physical activity for which you set a time aside is yogasanas and pranayamas rather than just jogging, cycling, or swimming. If it is this, then you get an additional score in this question depending upon the duration of this practice. If it is more than 30 minutes, generally speaking, more than 5 days in a week. If it is more than 30 minutes, then 2. If it is less than 30 minutes, then 1. And if your active routine sort of includes some physical activity, but it is not yogasanas and pranayamas, then the score is 0. Please add up your score for questions 1 to 3. The maximum score for these 3 questions is 10. Now, questions 1 to 3 were about physical activity. Question 4, which is generally your heaviest meal? Generally means at least 5 days a week. So if the heaviest meal is lunch, or if you have a brunch that is combining breakfast and lunch, say around 10 or 11 in the morning, if it is that is the heaviest meal of the day, then the score is 4, breakfast 2, and dinner 0. Food is best digested and utilized if it is taken during the pitta kal, in terms of Ayurveda, and the pitta kal of the day is from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So it is in that range that if we have the heaviest meal of the day, then it is easiest for the body to digest and utilize it properly. So the heaviest meal should be lunch. Now you'll say, how about the proverb that breakfast like a king and lunch like the prince? To that, the answer is simple. Who will eat more, the king or his young son? Hmm. The how heavy the breakfast is will not depend upon whose rank is higher. Hmm. It will depend upon the appetite. It will depend upon the requirements. And the young prince is likely to have much better appetite. And therefore, uh, if you have breakfast like the king, it will be relatively light. Lunch like the prince, who is like to take the heaviest meals. So, lunch like the prince, that's your heaviest meal of the day, should be lunch. And dinner, of course, no way. Should be a light dinner and an early dinner. What time do you have dinner? Now we come to the time at which you have this light dinner. Even if it is light, it should be, and it should be light. If it is before 8 p.m., then the score is 4. If it is between 8 and 9 p.m., 3. Between 9 and 10 p.m., 2. If it is after 10 p.m., then the score is 0. How many helpings of fruits or vegetables do you take in a day? If it is 4 or more, then the score is 4. If it is 2 to 3 helpings, then the 2. If it is less than 2 helpings, then 0. Now, how is it possible to have so many helpings, say 4 or more helpings of fruits or vegetables in a day? Uh, one has to be conscious of it. One can say have one fruit, one helping of fruit between breakfast and lunch. At lunch, apart from having a cooked vegetable, one can have a little salad. So that makes it 3 helpings. and then one can have some fruit, say between uh, lunch and dinner, and that will give one more helping. So it becomes four helpings. So, of course, one can see what fits your routine best, but it is not very difficult to have four helpings of fruits or vegetables in a day, cooked and uncooked put together. So, each of these, either of these, whether cooked or uncooked, will count as a helping. And a helping, one can say roughly, is about 100 grams. So, this will give us, if it is four helpings, it will give us 400 grams of fruits or vegetables in a day. And fruits and vegetables have been clubbed. From the nutritional point of view, there is not much difference between the two. That's why they have been clubbed together. Now we turn to the grains. So first the cereals, and then in the next question, we'll come to the pulses or the legumes. So do you generally have brown bread, brown rice, and other unrefined cereals? Which is much better than taking refined cereals. So the corresponding will be instead of brown bread, white bread. Instead of brown rice, take white rice. Or if you consume a lot of unrefined wheat in the form of other forms, what we call maida, you use that, then the score goes down. So if you generally have these unrefined cereals, then the score is 2. If sometimes refined, sometimes unrefined, then the score is 1. If you don't take unrefined cereals at all, then the score is 0. Now we turn to the pulses. Do you generally have unrefined pulses? What we call in Hindi, sabut dal. Uh, that is legumes or pulses from which the outer seed coat has not been removed. Then you find that if you generally take these, again, as in the previous question, generally have unrefined pulses, then the score is 2. Sometimes unrefined, sometimes refined, then the score is 1. If you don't take unrefined pulses at all, then the score is 0. Question 9. Which fats or oils do you use regularly? If it is mustard or canola, then the score is 2. If it is soybean, coconut, or a blend, then the score is 1. Any other oil, the score is 0. Mustard or canola have been placed on the top because their composition is very similar, and they have the largest amount of the omega 3 or N3 type of fatty acids. And in a vegetarian diet, uh, this can be a major source of the supply of these N3 or omega 3 fatty acids. Soybean also has some, but not as much as mustard or canola. And any other would include olive oil, rice bran oil, and many of the other oils which have been coming and going, being trendy during a few decades, and then again disappearing from our awareness till some other oil takes over. For these, the score is 0 because none of these other vegetable oils has any N3 or omega fatty acids. Do you use butter or ghee? If you use regularly in moderation, then the score is 2, occasionally 1, not at all 0. This is important because this may be the major source of saturated fat in your diet. And the current thinking is that we should not have too much fat, just about 10% of the energy intake. At maximum 30% of the energy intake should come from fat. And from whatever fat we take, about one third should be saturated, one third unsaturated. And within the unsaturated, uh, one third should be monounsaturated and the remaining one third polyunsaturated. So if we divide the total fat intake, one third saturated, one third monounsaturated, one third polyunsaturated. And within polyunsaturated, we should have a balance of N3 and N6 type of fatty acids. And the balance should be such that the ratio of N3 to N6 should not be less than 1 is to 5, which means uh, N6 should not be more than 5 times the N3. In fact, the more of N3, the better. So, using some butter or ghee, apart from other benefits of ghee, which Dr. Bhaswati Bhattacharya was talking about the other day, even from the point of view of just fat itself, some ghee or butter would be good to consume. Do you have spices? If you do, and variety of them in moderation, then the score is 2. Occasionally you use spices, then 1. Not at all, 0. Spices are a concentrated supply of antioxidants, and antioxidants are immunoboosters, and also uh, some of them can bring down blood sugar levels, blood cholesterol levels, and perhaps through their antioxidant action, they also uh, not only act as immunoboosters but also prevent many other forms of illness such as cancer, etc. So, uh, spices are not just for taste and flavor, they also have a functional role because of being a concentrated supply of these very essential micronutrients, which we call phytochemicals, that is, chemicals which we get from plants. And while the functions of these phytochemicals can be overlapping, the best known function that they have is that of acting as antioxidants. Some people ask a question about red chilies. That's also a spice, but that may not suit many. And you can skip that without any difficulty. Keep it to a minimum if you want it. And there are plenty of other spices which do not have the type of problems of creating acidity, etc., which red chilies have. Some people just can't tolerate red chilies, and you can skip them without any problem because there are plenty of other spices. And some of those which have been studied in considerable detail are turmeric and methi and uh, others, ginger, and others are being studied, but then they have been all studied in the laboratory of nature uh, by experimentation in society, in the field. So that type of experience is also very important, and it's based on ancient knowledge available in Ayurveda. So not only a wide variety of spices, apart from turmeric, ginger, etc., but black pepper and uh, uh, ilaichi and methi and mulethi and uh, tulsi and so on. So many of them are there, and which ones are better for preventing certain types of disease, like say common cold, which ones are better consumed in summers, which ones better consumed in winters, and which ones can be consumed round the year. All that knowledge is available in Ayurveda. But the important thing is we should have spices, preferably of the right type, keeping in mind the season, etc., and our own prakriti. We should have the right type of spices in moderation. In question 12, do you have dessert after lunch and or dinner? If it is only occasional, then it is the score is 2. If you take it often and miss it when it is not there, which means not only you take it fairly frequently, but also if it is not there, you miss it, which means you add stress to other things, which makes it still more significant. Stress itself, stress of missing this dessert could itself add a little bit to the total mental stress you have, and that is not good. So uh, then the score is 1. And if you have regularly, at least at one meal, regularly would mean more than 5 days in a week, then the score is 0. Question 13. Do you take non vegetarian food? Not at all. 2. Less than 5 days a week? 1. More than 5 days a week? 0. Now, for the purpose of this question, uh, we have treated fish as non vegetarian food and egg also as non vegetarian food. Please add up your score for questions 4 through 13. The maximum score for these questions is 26. These questions were about diet. Are you a non smoker, ex smoker, or a smoker? Non smoker, the score is 4. Ex smoker, but gave up smoking more than 10 years ago, then the score is 3. Ex smoker gave up smoking 5 to 10 years ago. Score is 2. Ex smoker gave up smoking less than 5 years ago. The score is 1. And if you are still a smoker, the score is 0. Question 15. Do you drink? So alcoholic drinks. No or rarely. 2. Sometimes. 1. Regularly. 0. Please add up your scores for questions 14 and 15. The maximum score for these questions is 6. These questions were about smoking and drinking. Other substances of abuse have not been included, but those will also bring the score down. Question 16. When do you generally go to bed? Generally means at least 5 days a week. Now, if you go to bed generally before 10 p.m., the score is 4. Now, this is a concession to the modern lifestyle. Ideally, one should go to bed soon after sunset, which means maybe around 8 o'clock, at the latest 9 o'clock. But as a concession to the present day life, this question gives you a score of 4, even if it is sometime before 10 p.m. If it is between 10 p.m. and midnight, the score is 2. And after midnight, the score is 0. How long do you generally sleep? Including an afternoon nap if you take any. And this is something which is recommended only for the elderly because they tend to have biphasic sleep. That's physiological, that's normal. So, how long do you generally sleep? But then lying down for 15-20 minutes without sleeping is something good for everybody. That we'll come to when we talk about back pain in one of the subsequent sessions. That's where it helps. Just lying down, changing your posture uh, sometime during the middle of the day is helpful for preventing back pain. How long do you generally sleep, including an afternoon nap? If the duration of sleep is 6 to 8 hours, then the score is 4. 5 to 6 hours or 8 to 9 hours, then the score is 3. If it is 9 to 10 hours, then the score is 2. If it is less than 5 or more than 10 hours, then the score is 0. Question 18. Is your sleep restless or disturbed? If it is only rarely disturbed, then 2, sometimes 1, almost every day 0. Only rarely the score is 2 because once in a while anybody will have a restless or disturbed sleep. But if it is only on rare occasions, then it is 2. Question 19. Do you find it difficult to fall asleep or wake up too often at night or are awake too early? These are 3 different types of insomnia or sleeplessness. Difficulty in falling asleep, waking up too often at night, or are awake too early. If this happens only rarely, then 2, only sometimes 1, almost every day 0. Please add up your scores for questions 16 to 19. The maximum score for these questions is 12. Questions 16 to 19 were about sleep. Now turn to the next set of questions. Question 20. Are you generally looking at a screen, for example, the TV or the computer or the smartphone, while having a meal? Now, while having a meal, doesn't mean that the meal and the two have some special incompatibility. What it means is that if you are having them even while having a meal, then it means you are truly addicted to the gadget. If it happens only rarely, then 4, sometimes 2, almost always 0. Do you take half to 1 hourly breaks from screen time? The break may be for just 5 minutes, but do you take a break, say roughly at least once in an hour from screen time? Uh, if it if you do it regularly, the score is 4. If you do it only sometimes, when you are less under pressure, or work pressure, or when you remember it, otherwise you tend to forget to take the break, then the score is 2. If you never take such breaks, you don't consider them necessary, then the score is 0. They are necessary for the health of the eyes, for preventing neck pain, back pain, and spending too much time in front of a screen is again becoming a major lifestyle factor contributing to some chronic diseases, particularly of the eyes and the neck and the back. And if one takes this 5-minute break, what does one do during this break? One of the things is to change the posture, stand up, maybe do some physical practice, simple physical practice like looking back, that is, movement of the neck, bending backwards at the back. Uh, and for the eyes, a few things one can do are to uh, wash the eyes with some water, neither too cold nor hot, just the very comfortable temperature. Wash the eyes with that. Look out, look at some distance within the room or through the window outside at greenery or the sky. Uh, you may do some eye exercises, the eyes left and right, up and down, diagonally, and round. Not too many rounds, 1 or 2 rounds of each of these movements. Then relax the eyes by closing the eyes and placing in front of the eyes cup palms so that you get eyes can relax in total darkness. The eyes are closed, and further, you have hands in front of your eyes. The hands should not be touching the eyes, they have to be in front of the eyes. Now, these are some of the things that one can do during this break for the eyes and the neck and the back. Question 22. Do you have symptoms of excessive screen time? For example, irritation in the eyes, headache, neck, or shoulder pain. If you never have these symptoms, the score is 0. Sometimes score is 1, frequently, then 0. However, if one has some of these problems, like irritation in the eyes or watering of the eyes, redness of the eyes, headache, or neck or shoulder pain, in spite of not spending too much time in front of the screen, then one should consult a doctor because these things can happen because of various other reasons also. It's not necessarily that they happen only when one spends too much time in front of the screen. So therefore, it depends. If you don't spend too much time in front of the screen but have some of these symptoms, then consult the doctor. Please add up your score for questions 20 to 22. The maximum score for these questions is 10. These questions were about screen time. Now we turn to another dimension. What is the number of members in your family, including a servant or a pet, if any, living under the same roof? So we're talking not of uh, the family or friends who are staying somewhere else. Talking of the number of people staying under roof in the same hostel or an ashram or something, then the score is 1. If you're alone in a house or an apartment where the neighbors hardly talk to each other, then the score is 0. And why this question is important is because it has been found that in general, those who stay completely alone live less than those who live with somebody else, even if that somebody else is a pet. Question to you 24. Uh, what is the type of work that you do regularly? Do you do some work? Yes, if you do some work and you do it for more than a living, for something like, say, getting mental satisfaction, or with an attitude of selfless service, or as a volunteer, So it's not that you should not be making a living from the work, but you are doing it not just for making a living, but for something more than that, then the score is 2. If you do some work regularly, but only to make a living, then the score is 1. If you don't do any work regularly at all, then the score is 0. Now, here work can include not just work that you do at the workplace, but if you are a homemaker, working at home with an attitude of selfless service would also merit a score of 2. Whereas doing this type of work merely to fulfill a responsibility would merit a score of 1. If the person is a student, then studying to be able to do better towards a goal higher than just making a living would merit a score of 2. Studying primarily to get equipped to make a living would merit a score of 1. Question 25. Do you have some hobby? If you do have and spend on the hobby an average of more than 1 hour per day, then the score is 2. If you do have a hobby but spend on it less than 1 hour per day, then the score is 1. And if you don't spend any time on the hobby at all, or you do not have a hobby, then the score is 0. If your work itself is your hobby, you enjoy it so much that you don't feel the need for a hobby, then the score will again be 2. Question 26. With respect to work, how do you feel? That is the amount of work. Just right, 2. If you feel overworked, then 1. If you feel you're idle, then the score is 0. So some work is better than no work at all. And everything has to be in moderation, including work. If you feel overworked, then the score is 1. If you feel just right, then the score is 2. To some extent, this feeling of being just right or overworked would also depend upon the type of work, how much do you enjoy it. To some extent, one should try to choose the work which one enjoys. And at the same time, one should also learn to enjoy the work that one has to do. Both are important. Because along with the work that we really enjoy, it's inevitable that during the day there will be certain types of work which we would not enjoy. But if we learn to enjoy them, not because we enjoy the work itself, but because we see in that also an opportunity for spiritual growth, then we will be able to enjoy any type of work that we have to do. Question 27. How satisfied are you with the overall achievements of your family? And what makes us feel proud of belonging to that family, uh, or be ashamed of being in that family, are areas such as and the educational status, the socioeconomic status, the health of the members of our family, particularly those who have to live with us, and we have to take care of their health in terms of nursing care, or taking them to repeatedly to hospitals and as doctors and so on. So, and interpersonal relationships, and on the whole, how much there of peace, harmony, and goodwill exist within the family. So, with respect to all these things, how satisfied are you with your family? If you're highly satisfied and proud of belonging to that family, then 2. If it's okay, so, then the score is 1. If you're highly dissatisfied, feel trapped in a family which you hate, then the score is 0. Sort of, kahan phas gaye? That sort of attitude, then the score is 0. If you're indifferent to the achievements of your biological family because you have a larger spiritual family, then again the score is 2. Now, at the place where you live, is there a relative or friend whom, if you give a phone call and say, I've just got what looks like a heart attack, the response would be, don't worry, I'm coming just now. If you have one such person available, then the score is 2. If you have some such people available whom you can call, but you're not sure what they would say, maybe they'll say that then, okay, call the ambulance, go to the hospital, I'll come and see you later. Then the score is 1. If you have no such person, you can't think of any such person, you have to deal with it yourself. Then the score is 0. If you lose something, then do you stay relaxed? So this talks about the general attitude. To some extent, what happens when you lose something will depend upon whether you lost a pen or whether you lost your passport or you lost your, say, PAN card, as it's called. If you lost something, some important document, then it will be different. Or for a student who lost all his notes near the exam. Now, it will depend upon what has been lost. But if in general your attitude is to stay relaxed after losing something, I can't find it right now. Later on, probably I will. And generally, you do. Uh, then the score is 2. If you find it difficult to forget it, then the score is 1. If you get very upset and find it impossible to forget the lost object, then the score is 0. Question 30. When under stress, do you write a diary? If you do it regularly, then 2. Occasionally, then 1. If you never write a diary, you are not into that habit, you don't look upon it as something which can help you deal with stress, then the score is 0. When under stress, which you are finding it almost impossible to cope with on your own, would you like to talk to a counselor or a close friend or a relative? If you're open to this, then the score is 2. You're not sure, maybe you will talk to somebody. The score is 1. Not at all, then 0. So there are difficulties which uh, almost nobody can deal with entirely on her own. And if you are open to sharing it with somebody proper and right, that is somebody who has the time to listen to you, is a patient listener, is neutral rather than biased in favor of you or against you, is the type of person who can keep secrets. If you have some such person available and you are willing to talk, and if you have no such person available, you are willing to go to a counselor, then the score is 2. You're not sure whether you would like to approach anybody at all. You would like to uh, you sort of make up your mind. You can't make up your mind whether to share or not to share, then the score is 1. And if you're not at all open to it, you want to deal with it entirely on your own, then the score is 0. Please add up your scores for questions 23 to 31. The maximum score for these questions is 18. These questions were about mental stress. Now we turn to the last 9 questions. Question 32. If you are traveling alone and have to face an emergency, for example, you feel pain in the chest, or your train is attacked by robbers, or your plane has been hijacked, how would you feel? Not at all afraid. 2. A little afraid. 1. Very scared. Then the score is 0. You may say, how can one be not at all afraid in such a situation? It's difficult, but it's not impossible. As Sri Aurobindo has said, that the only way to go through life armored against all fear, peril, and disaster, only 2 things are needed. 2 that always go together: the grace of the Divine Mother, and on your side, an inner state made up of faith, sincerity, and surrender. Life is full of uncertainties. It's an erratic and unpredictable life. And therefore, fear, peril, and disaster are a part of life. But one can go through it without any fear, with total mental peace, if only 2 things are present. Makes it look very simple. Only 2 things are needed. Makes it look very simple. It's not way too that simple, but all the same, it is possible. And what are those 2 things? On your side, faith, sincerity, and surrender. 3 very pregnant words: total faith, total sincerity, and total surrender. An excellent combination for walking through life without any fear, with total peace, in spite of life being difficult, unfair, uncertain, unpredictable, and being full of all types of peril and disaster. And if one has this total faith, sincerity, and surrender, the other thing will follow, will go with it, and that is the grace of the Divine Mother. This it's not that it will come only through total faith, sincerity, and surrender. The grace is always there, but we will not be receptive to it. We will not be able to get all that this grace can give us unless we have this faith, sincerity, and surrender. Question 33. Do you think about your future? This is a question particularly for young people. If one thinks about it only occasionally and optimistically, then the score is 2. If one thinks about the future, what will happen to me? What will I do in life? Will I be able to uh, have a comfortable life, a happy life? If one thinks about it often but without much fear or anxiety, then 1. If one thinks a lot and with fear, anxiety, and insecurity, then the score is 0. Do you participate in the activities of some social or religious or spiritual groups? If so, how often do you visit such places? Once a week or more? Then 2. Less than once a week? 1. Not at all? 0. Question 35. Do you meditate or pray? If you do, 5 or more times a week? 2. Less than 5 times a week? 1. Not at all? 0. When it comes to prayer, it could be not just 5 or more times a week, it could be 5 or more times a day. Because just about anything that we do is an occasion for prayer. It should start with a prayer, end with a prayer. The mother told Asika one day that, how often do you remember me? Are you thinking of me when you're brushing your teeth? So anything can be an occasion for remembering the divine. And that itself is a prayer, remembering the divine with gratitude. Question 36. What is the goal of your life? If the goal is spiritual growth, then the score is 2. If the goal is just to be a good person, then 1. If the goal is to be happy and successful, then the score is 0. Being happy and successful is a self centered goal. And one of the best ways to be actually truly happy is to overcome this self absorption. If the goal is to be a good person, it's a good goal. But just being a good person does not make us immune to the various ups and downs of life. Even a good person can have a road accident, an incurable disease, a failed marriage, or a delinquent child. So, being a good person is not enough. If the goal is spiritual growth, that is where we find the key to being at peace in spite of all these uncertainties of life. So, and it is not only for uh, staying at peace that one adopts spiritual growth as the goal. One enjoys that type of a life which is based on that goal. The rest is all a byproduct. So we live the way we should be living. Happiness, peace of mind, good health, they follow as byproducts. Spiritual growth itself is also a byproduct. Question 37. If somebody has hurt you, for you to forgive him or her is quick and easy, genuine forgiveness. Not just a patronizing attitude or not just to get rid of the person. Okay, I told you now, I've forgiven you. Not that sort of an attitude. If it is quick and easy, 2. If it is slow and difficult, then 1. If it's almost impossible, then 0. The other side of the same, if you have hurt somebody, even if it was unintentionally, for you to apologize to him or her is quick and easy, 2. Slow and difficult, 1. Almost impossible, 0. Question 39. For you, are the boundaries between family, friends, colleagues, and others very blurred? 2. Somewhat fuzzy. 1. Very sharp. 0. So these ties and these relationships, which are very obvious to us, like family, friends, and colleagues, are one type of relationship, but then at a deeper level, we are all interrelated. And even a stranger is a manifestation of the same divine of which we are. And like us, the stranger is also an imperfect manifestation. And therefore, both at the level of our origin, at the level of our essence, which is divine, at the level of our potential, which is to manifest this divinity, and in terms of the actual manifestation, in all these respects, we are all one and interrelated. So, if one is living a life based on this type of awareness, and therefore the boundaries between family, friends, colleagues, and the so called others are very blurred, then the score is 2. If these boundaries are somewhat fuzzy, then the score is 1. If this clear cut boundary is very sharp, then the score is 0. So, as Sri Ramakrishna, not Sri Ramakrishna, as Maharshi Raman said, there are no others. So, in that sense, nobody is the other. It's not me versus the rest. It is all just us. So, if that is the attitude, then the boundaries are hardly there, and then the score is 2. And this is what is embodied in this shloka from Mahopanishad. Uh, what is best known is the last two words of in this shloka, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that is the world is a family. Ayam bandhu, ayam neti ganana lagucheta sam, udara charita nam tu Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Ayam bandhu, that is, this person is my friend. Ayam neti. Now, bandhu and ayam combined one word, that becomes bandhurayam. Neti, no. So this person is my friend. Neti is no. This person is my friend. This person is not. Ganana laghuchetasam. This type of calculation, this type of a score is kept by the narrow minded. Laghu is small. Chetana is consciousness. So the person who has a narrow consciousness, a small consciousness, Ganana laghuchetasam. This type of calculation, this type of score is kept by the one who is not generous but narrow minded. Udara charitanam. That is the one whose consciousness is udar, that is generous, large, one who is large hearted. For him, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world itself is a family. So, ayam bandhurayam neti ganana laguchetasam udara charitanam tu Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Who is your most dependable support in life? If it is God, then the score is 2. If it is a relative or a friend, then the score is 1. If you feel that you have no support at all in life, then the score is 0. We've not done a very systematic study, but uh, whenever we have a group of senior citizens, then sometimes we ask this question in a questionnaire that has been circulated. Who was your most dependable support at age 10, at age 20, at age 30, at age 40, and 50 and above? The usual trend is at age 10, the most dependable support were parents. At age 20, the most dependable support were friends. At 30, the most dependable support was the spouse. At 40, the most dependable support were children. And 50 and above, the most dependable support is God. So that has been a general trend. There are many exceptions, but then if it is a mature person filling up this questionnaire and you feel that your most dependable support in life is God, then the score is 2. Because that is the only real, constant, most dependable support that we have. But this awareness comes a little later in life, which is also okay. But that is how the life cycle is designed. So, the most dependable support, as the mother has said, the best friend one can have is the divine. to whom one who can say everything, reveal everything. We feel we are revealing. The divine, of course, knows, but then we get the satisfaction of finding a friend, the best friend we can have, for whom everything is easy. Everything that we find very difficult is very easy. One can do everything, one who knows everything, and who is available to us all the time, any time of the day or night, without any appointment, completely free of charge, and is available to everyone, rich and poor alike, the good and bad alike, the saint and the sinner alike. So, the best support one can have, isn't he the divine to whom one can say everything, reveal everything? Please add up your score for questions 32 through 40. The maximum score for these questions is 18. These questions were about spiritual inclination. Now, please add up all your scores, the subtotals of the different dimensions. The maximum score is 100. You can do that later on. Don't have to do it right now. If your score, the total score out of 100 is 90 or above, you are a rare person. It's always lonely at the top. If it's 80 to 89, you're not perfect, but so what? After all, you're human. If it's 70 to 79, it's a very good score, but you can do better. If it's 60 to 69, should try to do better, seriously. And 59 and below, you really needed this wake up call. That is, this questionnaire should serve as a wake up call for you. In general, what we have found is that the score of those who are very young is generally in the last two categories, that is, sometimes as low as 30 or 40, and rarely more than 70. And that's because as young people, particularly students, there is so much peer pressure, parental pressure, societal pressure, and the need to conform that the lifestyle takes a hit. And they can get away with it because their score is low, but then they don't generally have any chronic disease. But then chronic disease does not develop overnight. The damage to the body has already begun in young age. It's only that slow accumulation of this damage over 3 or 4 decades will eventually manifest as a disease. And therefore, even as a young person, if one gets this wake up call, it's never too late to begin. One can always start modifying. But in general, if you do a cross section of people, and we have data on more than 1,000 people by now, and some of it is likely to be published soon, we find that it is the younger people who have a score on the lower side and same time no chronic disease, which means they can get away with it. But then the wake up call seems to come around the age of 40 because you find that the lifestyle score starts going up from 40 and above, because that is when the wake up call comes and the person is mature enough to do something seriously about it, and the score starts going up. And then it does not grow further, does not rise further. The lifestyle score does not rise much further after 60, and rarely after 70 you find any further improvement. And that happens because, firstly, this person may be already having a very good score. Secondly, by then the person feels that I have done enough. Now I can leave it to fate, I can leave it to the doctors. So after that, the person again settles down for the type of whatever improvement that person could achieve between 40 and 60 years of age. So that is the usual pattern, but there are and there can be many exceptions. Now that you know your score and you also know what you need to do to improve your score, uh, if you start doing the necessary work on yourself right away, you may add as much as 20 years to your life. The 7 dimensions that we have studied in this questionnaire are physical activity, diet, smoking and drinking, sleep, screen time, mental stress, and spiritual inclination. Finally, establish a greater peace and quietness in your body that will give you the strength to resist attacks of illness. So we end where we started. That is, psychological factors can override physical factors. So if one can just establish a greater peace and quietness in the body, that itself gives enormous strength to resist attacks of illness, to stay healthy, prevent virtually every disease. That doesn't mean one becomes immortal, but what it gives us is good health. And if there's an inevitable illness, it comes late in life, and that illness does not make us miserable. Because having an illness is one thing, being miserable because of it is another. One can have an illness and yet be happy, be at peace. Suggested reading. Uh, the first one is a basic book on yoga and physical practices and includes a video on the physical practices of yoga, a primer on yoga, theory and practice, published by the National Book Trust. And the next one is the one that forms the foundation of this course, the S.04 course, Back to Health Through Yoga, published by Rupa Books. Eating Wisely and Well, that concentrates on the diet, one of the important physical factors in lifestyle. And was the foundation for the S.02 course, the course S.02 that we did earlier. And to get into the deeper aspects of life, which is what gives us peace of mind as well as the spiritual inclination, which was a part of this questionnaire. This book, Understanding Spirituality and Living It 24/7, Real Questions, Rational Answers. Eating Wisely and Well is also a Rupa Books publication, and Understanding Spirituality, a publication of Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Delhi branch. If you have any difficulty in getting these books, they're all available online on Amazon. If you have any difficulty in getting these books, or if you want a physical copy which you can't get somewhere, then you can always email to us, and we have an arrangement for sending it by courier to any part of the world. This is another view of the inside of the meditation hall of Sri Aurobindo Ashram Delhi branch, a view that I'm showing for the first time in the series. And as you can see, we have these real life statues of Sri Aurobindo and the mother as they used to sit on darshan days. This was a part of the Republic Day tableau last year, which the Ministry of Culture was generous enough to give it to us. And to keep it well protected, we dismantled that tableau, and this was one part of that tableau which we have installed in the meditation hall. We love to hear from you. Send us any questions or comments that you have on this email address, yes@yesspirituality.com. Gratitude to the Mother and Sri Aurobindo for making these sessions possible. And thank you all for attending and watching the video.
We can close with a moment of silence and meet tomorrow. Thank you, everyone.